Hello, everyone, and welcome to the class. This is David A. Cox with TechTalkAmerica.com, and today we are talking all about Final Cut Pro 10. I always like to reference the date when I teach these classes because as time goes on, things do change. Today's date is September 5th of 2015. We're going to be covering a lot of different aspects of Final Cut Pro. This is a very, very large piece of software to cover. My goal is to give you all of the information you need to get started. This is really designed for people who are new-ish on the user level. So if you haven't already done so, you can purchase Final Cut Pro 10 through the Mac App Store. That would be just go to the little Apple icon, go to App Store, and you can purchase it there. And for anyone who complains about the price, I just want to remind you, Final Cut, if my memory serves me correctly, used to be $2,000. It has come down significantly since then. But it's a great little piece of software. I use it all the time. I've been using Final Cut, different versions of it, of course, for over 10 years now. I actually originally trained myself in video editing when I was about 14 years old. Back in those days, it was the Media 100 system, and then eventually Final Cut, etc. So we're going to go over all that today. For those of you who are tuning in after we record this, because we do have a live audience here right now, I want to give you a very, very strong recommendation before you start playing the rest of this class. In the description of this video, I'm giving you all a PDF that I've made up for you, which has a ton of different shortcuts and also some hyperlinks to products that I tend to recommend for people who are getting into video production. Not all of you know this. My degree is actually in filmmaking. So this is something I have definitely had plenty of time to play with over the last many years. But if you need recommendations as far as like what kind of hard drive to keep your footage on, that's one of the big things I tend to recommend. Keep your footage on an external hard drive. You'll see my recommendations there. All sorts of different lighting and sound equipment, different digital cameras that you can use. All that you'll find, of course, in that PDF. So look for that in the description. First thing I want to talk about when you're getting into video editing, I have a very strong recommendation. Keep your footage organized and keep it on an external hard drive. Now, for those of you who are curious kind of what I use, I'm going to actually drag it into the screen so you can see that I'm actually legit when I talk about this. So this is my little hard drive. I have a Drobo Mini. The reason why I really stand by this product, yes, it is more expensive than most external hard drives. It also has 4 hard drives in it. The reason being is it's basically massaging your data between 4 different drives so that if one drive fails, you pop it out, you pop in a new one, it rebuilds everything, it's expandable, and they're just awesome. So there's a few different versions of the Drobo. The Drobo Mini is the one I like because it's so easily portable. And when I travel, which I'm doing more and more these days for business, I can just it comes with a bag. I can just bring it with me. So definitely check that out. And what I've done today is we're going to be creating a little video. It's not going to be of any significant content, but I've just tagged a few video files so I can show you how to navigate this. Now, when you go into Final Cut, it's going to look something somewhat like this. Okay, your screens might look a little bit different. You might not have that open. Okay, but I want to kind of walk you through everything here. So the first thing we need to do is go over a few very basic definitions, okay? When you're starting with Final Cut, you're going to have to create a few things here. And if I go here to File and New, you'll see we have the 3 major items here: Project, Event, and Library. These can get to be very, very confusing, trust me. I've been confused by them in the past. The project is fairly straightforward. It's whatever the edit is. So I might be doing, this video for this, another video for that. Sometimes I do 2 different versions of something. That'll be a separate project, okay? Next is the event. The best way for me to describe an event is, let's say you're shooting a movie, okay? Each event might be a different scene, but you can pull footage from different events into one project. And a library contains multiple events, okay? So I know that can be a little bit confusing, but I want to go over really what that is. So the first thing we're going to do is because we're starting new here, I'm going to create a new project, okay? And I'm just going to call this Demo, okay? And you can see up here, it's got this looks like a little clapboard right here. If you're kind of going through and you have multiple projects, this is the icon that you're looking for to double click on to pull up the actual edit itself. Okay, and what it's done is it's created an event here, which we're just going to use to bring in our footage. Once again, please keep your footage on an external drive. Now, to do this, what I'm going to do is normally what you would do to bring in footage is you go to File and you go to Import, okay, and you just tell it where the footage is. Also, if you have a digital camera, you can plug it into Final Cut Pro and it will immediately go to that screen and say, okay, which of these clips do you want to bring in, and also where do you want to put them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cheat a little bit here because this is a demo class, and I have created some quick clips here, which I'm just going to literally drag and drop here into this event, which is another way that you can technically do it. So, right here, this, I like to sometimes use different terminology than what Apple puts out, just to try to make it a little bit easier to follow. This, I've always referred to this as my bin. Okay, this is everything. This is all the footage. Forgive me, I'm going to mute the audio for a moment here. So this is all of my footage, and what you'll notice is as you skim over it with your cursor, you're going to see a preview of it right here. This is your preview window at the top right corner. Now, the bottom portion right here, this is the timeline. That's where the actual edit takes place. When you're going through Apple's resources, if you should go through Apple's resources, sometimes it's referred to as timeline, sometimes it's storyline. They are technically speaking different. I'm going to try to make this easier. I am just going to use the word timeline today. Okay, so for anyone out there who is an expert and is wondering why I'm specifically using wrong terminology, it's because I'm trying not to confuse people here. Okay. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're going through your footage is you're going to want to start to pull the best shots here. And for any of you who are curious, by the way, if you've never heard of me before, one of my little hobbies that I'm very passionate about is I have an aerial drone. I do a lot of drone films. If you happen to be curious about them, you can go on Facebook, search for Droning Provincetown. That's where we are. And you can find a whole bunch of my little videos there. I try to put out, sometimes a video a week if I'm fortunate enough, especially in the summer. So what you're going to do is go through here and you're going to pick out your best shots and you're going to start to bring them here into your timeline. I'm going to give you a few easy shortcuts to make this process easier. So the first thing is when you're skimming through your footage and you kind of find that perfect place, okay, you're going to probably want to play it. And basically whenever you hit the space bar on your keyboard, that's going to play it. So let me just hit play right now. There is actually audio on this clip. This is the only shot that's not with the drone, I believe. Okay, and I find that perfect moment. I'll wait till there's some seagulls in here. And at that point, I'm going to tell it what my in point is. And to mark the in point, hit the letter I. Just think, in equals I. Okay, so you get that little yellow box. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the footage and figure out how long is this shot going to go. And when I find the part where I want it to stop, I'm going to hit the letter O. O as in out point. Very, very simple. So you can see here, it's showing me of this clip, this part here, I have essentially tagged as being a good shot. So now I'm going to bring it here into the timeline. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Yes, you can actually drag and drop it if you want, but I like to use hotkeys, shortcut keys, and that's what I'm going to be teaching you right now. There are 3 keys that work to do this. Personally, I only use one of them because for organization purposes, I just tend to find this to be better, and keep in mind, I typically don't shoot with actors, so I'm not really worried about things, matching up correctly. So the 3 letters are Q, W, and E. For those of you on an American keyboard, those are all next to each other. That's the easy way to remember it. The one that I use more than anything is E. It's going to put it at the end of your project. Okay, so you can see it's now right here in my timeline. Of course, it's my first shot, so the end and the beginning is the same shot. The other options here are W. Now what W is going to do, let me kind of zoom in here, and you can pinch, if you have a trackpad, you can just kind of pinch with your fingers just like you would zoom in on Safari. Okay, if I use W, what it's going to do is this. It's going to put it wherever this little bar is. That is referred to as the playhead. Okay, so that playhead is going to kind of interrupt the shot if it's not between 2 shots. I'm going to do undo right now to clear that out. By the way, very, very good hotkey to be aware of. Undo, universal on the Mac, is Command Z as in zebra. The other option is Q. Now, Q is very, very good for when you're dealing with interviews, and I'll try to paint the picture for you. You're watching an interview, and they've got someone on camera, and then they go to what's referred to as B-roll footage. It's something else. Maybe it's them walking through a park, but you still hear their audio. this is an example where Q can be definitely useful. So Q, check it out. It puts it above the shot. Now, if this clip here had no audio, you'd still hear the audio from this shot here. And I'm going to show you how to tweak audio, of course, in a little bit. But the big one I tend to use more than anything is E, because it just puts it at the end of the project, and then I'll manipulate it later on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in order for me to kind of show you this editing, I'm going to just put in a few other shots here. Let's see here. Let me find a good shot here. I for endpoint. Let's hit play. Just give it a few seconds of footage here. And scrolling down, I've got a few other shots here. Aerial drone, definitely the one of the, I'd say the coolest gadget that I own. For those of you who are curious, I use the Yuneec, which is spelled Yuneec, Q500, which I'm about to upgrade to a 4K camera, which they just released recently. So let's get some other footage here. Let's get this shot here. You can see the reflection, the shadow of it rather, there at the left-hand side. And maybe some, ooh, I love this shot here. Very, very difficult shot to do without looking at the monitor. A little 360 right there. Okay, so we've got a bunch of shots here that we can start to play with, which is always good. Let me get maybe one more. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our shots here that we can work with. Next thing I want to do is I want to show you a little bit about trimming clips, okay, and starting to break these down and refine them. There's a few different ways to do this, and I admittedly switch back and forth depending on what kind of a shot it is. So first of all, if you look here towards the middle of my screen, you see here there's an arrow. That's kind of what it is by default, okay? And one of the ways that you can trigger the arrow is to tap the letter A. For those of you who are using the little cheat sheet that I gave you, that is on there. Another option is blade, and blade is just, well, really exactly what it sounds like. You are splicing the shot into two shots. So if I'm going through this shot here and it's like, you know what, I want it to end a little bit earlier, okay, I can put the blade right here on the shot and I can click and it's split this into two different clips, okay? And one example where that might be really useful, and I'm going to actually show you how to do this later on in the class today, is sometimes if you're doing a shot and you want to have it be fast and then slow it down, that's what you do. You take the original shot, you splice it in two, part of it becomes faster, part of it becomes slower, you're good to go. And then we don't have to do any blending, no transitions, it just automatically goes. So let's undo that for now. The other way, though, is, let me kind of zoom in here so you can better see this. If you put your cursor towards the end of one clip, see how it turns from an arrow into that little icon right there? So what that means is if I click right now and drag to the left, it's going to bring the clip back. So it's going to be cutting into the final frames of this video. See how it's actually counting back the frames right there. Now if I moved it a little bit to the right, see how it shifts? It goes from there to there. So now I'm doing the same thing, but to the other clip, to the one on the other side. I'm cutting into it so that it starts later, just like that. Now you can toggle between that also using the range selector, trim rather. Trim. I just don't really find it very necessary because your cursor is already between the two shots. There's really no need to do it. Zoom here can be handy. For those of you who are on an iMac and using a traditional mouse, this might be a little bit more handy. The reason why I don't typically use zoom is because on my trackpad, I just simply pinch with my fingers if I need to really get in there to see the shot. So for example, if I pull back all the way, that's my whole project. Whereas I pinch to zoom in, you can see how now I can see a much more detailed version of that particular shot. Just like that. The other way that you can do this is if you look at the very bottom of my screen, see we have a little magnifying glass with a minus and a plus. You can manually do it that way too. And a little trick here is if you put the playhead, if you click and put the playhead, it's going to know that you want, it knows that you want to zoom in on that area. Okay? So for fine-tuning adjustments, that's going to be very, very handy. Another trick that I like to do, and this isn't going to be useful for everyone, but I sometimes like to mark points, in my case, especially with audio. So what I'm going to do right now is I actually have an audio file that I'm going to bring into this, and I want to give you a very strong piece of advice for those of you who are creating video content for YouTube or Facebook. My apologies if this sounds off topic. This is important that you should know, because if you don't know this and you go through and you spend hours and hours of creating content, you could be hit with a very unfortunate reality after you've put in all that work. Let me explain how music works with both YouTube and Facebook. If you are putting background music on Facebook, if you do not own the rights to it, they will take it down. There's not really even a great ability to challenge that decision. You really are kind of forced to take it down. So if you are doing some sort of a photo montage with music, by your favorite musician, don't do it. What you want is copyright-free music. There's a great resource that I've given to all of you in that little cheat sheet, okay? I do request, if you don't mind using the link that I give you in that cheat sheet. It is an affiliate link, so we get a little bit of credit. It doesn't cost you anything, but again, just another way we can keep these classes free without charging any of you to take them. That service is called Audio Jungle. I'll give a quick shout out to my absolute favorite composer. There's a guy by the name of Brian Crutchfield. He's a graduate of Berklee School of Music. My God, this dude is awesome. And he did the song that I'm actually having here in the background, which, yes, I do own copyright access to. So when you want to bring in music, there's two different ways to do it. You can either drag it and drop it right into your project, just as you saw I just did. Or, if you look here on the right-hand side, see the little music note? That really, more than anything, that talks to iTunes. Now, it can talk to other folders, including GarageBand. So if you have it in iTunes, you can also bring it in through that method. Usually with this kind of thing, I tend to use copyright-free music, so it's usually in file form. I usually just drag and drop it. In the case of YouTube, by the way, you can use copyrighted music. And points for me for saying copyrighted and not copywritten, because I always make that mistake. The big difference is that you cannot make money from the video if you use a copyrighted song. So just be aware of that. So typically, if I can, I try to use copyright-free music. You are paying a licensing fee to use it. It's usually right around $18, depending on how long the track is, how popular it is, that kind of thing. But definitely a great resource to keep in your computer as a bookmark. So what we're going to do at this point is, for those of you who are not tuning in live right now, we're going to do a very quick commercial break. Once again, it's how we are able to keep these classes free. For those of you who are live, there will be no interruption. And when we come back, we're going to continue on. We've got a whole bunch of other stuff to go over. This is David A. Cox with Tech Talk America, going over Final Cut Pro today. We will be right back. And we're back. So before we went to our little break, one of the things I mentioned was one of the tricks that I use for creating my projects. If you've ever seen my little drone videos that I put on Facebook, I tend to edit to the beat of the music, or just key moments in the music. So for this, I do have to actually turn my audio on. And one of the tricks I like to use is a shortcut. It's on your cheat sheet, and it's for marking. And you can do this with video or audio. My personal preference is I like to do it for audio for obvious reasons. And to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that your playhead is at the very beginning of your shot, or really wherever you want. But make sure that you're clicked on your audio file right here, okay? And what you're going to do is when you hit play, if you hit the M key on your keyboard, it's just going to put a little notation of that moment. And so typically what I'll do is I will do that first, and I will align my shots to meet those moments. And that way your most dramatic moments, it cuts right in at that perfect moment. So let's just go through it and I can show you kind of how it looks. Oops, sorry. Forgot there's audio in that clip. Let me take that down. And I will show you how I did that in just a moment. Sorry, I clicked on the video clip. I should have done audio. Let's do that from there. So I've just gone through the song, and I was just hitting the M key, and you see these little blue dots? Those all represent little marks. They're just a notation. It doesn't affect anything in the video, and you can always clear them out if you don't want them. So what I'll do is I will align these shots to meet this. So let's just try moving some stuff around here, just see if I can try to extend it. Now, another feature that's really cool about this is even though I only told it to bring in this much of the shot, it knows there's actually more there. So if I suddenly need, you know what, I need another like 1 second of footage right here, I can go right here and I can drag it, and it's going to pull it from that original file. So check it out. So now I know it fits the right time code just like that. Same goes with this shot. I need just a little bit more, and you'll notice it's snapping to that beat right there. If you want that, by the way, if you want that feature so that it snaps to different moments like that, that's this little button right here. Okay, notice it's blue. I believe by default, when you actually get Final Cut Pro, it does automatically come set that way. So next what I want to do is I want to start to walk you through a few other features here, and we're going to go over this kind of bar right here on the right-hand side of my screen towards the center. Okay, and we're going to kind of jump around a little bit. First one here we have is the effects browser. The effects browser comes with a lot of different effects. So for example, if you want to suddenly age your clip to make it look like 50s TV, watch this. You'll see in just a moment it'll load it. Let me click on the clip. That's the thing. You do have to click on the clip and then click in here. It should load it in just a moment. Because we're live, it may not do it right off the bat. There we go. So see, it's giving me actually a little preview right here of what it will look like. Another trick, by the way, is if I hit the space bar right now, it'll just play that clip with that special effect. And notice there's no rendering here, it just automatically does it. It might not be as smooth as when it's applied and it does render it out, but it still looks pretty good. You can add noise if you want to give it that kind of film look. Aged paper, some of these are definitely more appealing than others. Now, if you want to get some really, really awesome extra effects, I want to direct your attention. There's a link in the description of the video, as well as in that little cheat sheet, to a separate class that we did, and this is for those of you who want to kind of kick it up a notch, take it to the next level of editing. I did a video, I believe it was like just last week, called my top 10 Final Cut Pro 10 plugins. These are all through a website that you can very easily download these really amazing effects, including one, for those of you who do actually use actors, there's a separate video I did on this particular plugin. I'll put a separate link to that one because it's not in that little document. I'll put a separate link to that in the description of the video. If you have actors, it will basically do the same thing that Photoshop would do to skin in a photo. So what it will do is it'll track the person's face and it will smooth it in real time. It's a really amazing little plugin. We have a whole video on that. If that interests you, check out the links. Next one we have here is the little photo icon. You guessed it, that connects to the Photos app or iPhoto, for those of you who haven't moved on. This is nice. I know a lot of you out there have questions about the Ken Burns effect. That would be the ability to zoom in or out of a photo. Can you do it in Final Cut Pro without any special plugins? Yes. That being said, there is a plugin that makes it significantly easier. That is included in that top 10 Final Cut Pro plugins video. So please, if that interests you, I would much strongly recommend that you get it. It's not expensive. If you actually bundle it with a few others, you can save a little bit of money. But the way photos work here is pretty darn simple. You literally just take your photo and you drag it and drop it into your timeline. And see, it just brings it right out just like that. Okay. If you ever bring in a photo and you get this kind of effect where you get those black bars, I do want to show you how to manage that. If you look up here, oops, sorry, let's put the playhead right here. If you look up here, you see we have these black bars on the side. Here right to the bottom left of it, we have this little icon right here with an arrow next to it. There's 3 different forms of this. We have transform, crop, and distort. Personally, I don't really know anyone who uses distort. Not to say that there isn't a use for it. I just personally have never really had a need for it. Usually what I use more than anything is crop. Okay, so you're telling it, you know, what parts here do you want to trim? So I'm just going to, you know, tell it whatever I want, crop. So what it's doing, you'll notice here, is it's formatting it for the shape of this window. And I can drag it up and down. Let's do it just like that. Hit done. And now it fills the whole screen. By the way, through that is the other method for Ken Burns. it's my own personal opinion that I tend to think the other method is a little bit better. It gives you a few more options, but that is another way that you can do the Ken Burns effect, is you just go over here to Ken Burns, okay, and you can do the before and after, just like you can in iMovie, for those of you who are familiar with iMovie. If you want to go on the cheap, that is definitely the way to do it, since it doesn't cost anything, but if you want a few additional features, that's where the plugin is a little bit better. Let's keep it on crop for now. Okay, so that's about bringing in photos. If you hold the command key, you can bring in multiple photos at once. Good thing to know. Music we've already talked about. The next one here, I've never really got what this icon is trying to look like. I tend to think it looks a little bit like an hourglass. Maybe they're trying to make it look like a curtain. It's transitions, okay? So one of the things I like to caution people about, it can be tempting to use some of these funky transitions. Stay away from them, please. Please stay away from them. Cross dissolve is your friend, okay? Fade to black is your friend. A lot of the other ones here, they're just a little bit too distracting. They tend to get away from your subject. So if you want to add a transition to your shots, like let's say, for example, forgive me, I'm going to delete this shot right here. So say I want to go from this shot to this shot here, okay? What you can do is you can just take it and drag it and drop it between the two shots. Again, this part is very, very similar to how iMovie works. And you'll see we have this little gray bar here that represents that. Now, if you want to adjust the timing of it, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see this better. You can grab either corner and you can drag it in. Oops, sorry, I grabbed the wrong part. Come on. Stop it. He never likes to do this for me when I'm live. Anyways, that's how you do it. You can also go into the precision editor and you can, by double clicking, and you can make it shorter or longer. Okay, so we'll just do that. Wasn't planning on going into the precision editor today. Next one we have here is titles. Okay, so titles can be applied one of two ways for the most part. You can either apply them to your footage or just a background, which is either black or a color. Sometimes it might be some sort of a animated background. If you want something that's a little bit more interesting than a black background, there's another resource that I've given you for within that cheat sheet for VideoHive. One of the aspects of VideoHive, they have two different features. They have some really amazing 3D graphic features. They also have some great stock footage that you can buy. So like if you wanted maybe, ocean waves just in the background, you didn't have a shot of ocean waves, you can buy it for like $5. It's very, very inexpensive for that kind of footage. So if you want to apply a title, let me show you how to do both methods here, okay? So let's say I want to apply it to my video here, okay? What you do is go through here. They give you a whole bunch of different options right here as far as, what kinds of different titles you can do. One of the features that you got in the latest update to Final Cut is some pretty amazing 3D ones. Just be careful how often you use them because it can definitely get to be repetitive if you use them too much. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to do this blur one here. It's very, very subtle. Once again, if you just kind of roll your cursor over the preview, it'll kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. I use this quite a bit in my videos. I'm going to literally drag and drop it above my shot here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the viewer a couple of seconds of just ordinary footage. Then the title comes in, and then it's going to fade out. Now, if you want to adjust the length of this, what you can do is just like a shot, you can put your cursor at the end or beginning, and you can kind of drag it back. Okay, so right now it's showing me this title is going to be 3 minutes, call it 3¼ seconds rather long. So to actually edit the title, here's how you do it. You're going to click on it first of all so that it's highlighted. And if you look over here at the very right-hand side of my screen, see these little buttons here, this icon right here? Okay, that is your inspector. Okay, and so this is going to open up this window where you can put in exactly what title. You can choose the font, you can choose the size. So I'm going to just put in the name. I'm going to call it Droning Provincetown. That's the name of my page. Presents ... And you can change what font. Just keep in mind, if you're going to change the font or the size, you have to highlight it, just like a Word document or Pages document for that matter. So if you don't see it here on the screen, like you don't see currently on mine, the reason is your playhead needs to be where the text is actually showing up. Where'd it go? Okay. So we're going to have to change a few aspects of it here. Okay. And let's move it. There we go. Right there. Now, the other thing you might want to do is you might want to reposition it. Okay. So for that, you're going to want to go here, same button we had before, except in this case, we're not doing crop, we're doing transform. Okay. And when you're in transform mode, which is this icon that you see right now, you can literally drag it and drop it wherever you want on the screen. Something that I wish you had in iMovie that you just don't quite have. So let's see how it looks. Let me make sure my speakers, yep, they are muted. Okay. Now the reason why I was a little stuttered right there, see the orange bar above it? That just means that it hasn't quite rendered yet. One of the features I love about Final Cut Pro, the current version compared to some of the older versions, is when you're not moving your cursor, it automatically starts to render any video that needs rendering. For those of you who didn't understand that, render basically means process. Okay, a lot of times when you're dealing with graphics, transitions, certain special effects like fast motion, slow motion, all of those require rendering. With this, it tends to be pretty quick. That is definitely where, if you have a better Mac, like a Mac Pro or an iMac, it's going to do it significantly faster. I actually do all of my editing. My computer is a 13-inch MacBook Air, but I get the maximum specs that I can get. So, but it definitely, if I had a better computer, that would be helpful for me one day. They also have some, I want to point out, they do have some 3D text options here. So when you click where it said normal here, if you click there, we have 2D styles. We also have 3D styles. Okay, so give you that different look. And you can change the colors for pretty much all of these. So if you don't like glossy green, you can use glossy green and make it blue or white or whatever you want. So just be aware of that. Okay, we've gone over titles. The other part I want to show you is that if you want to do a title that doesn't have video as a background, okay, so for that, let's just say I want to do the same thing. What you can do is instead of dragging it on top of a clip, you can drag it either between two clips or before a clip. So in my case, see here when I drop it right here, it becomes its own little bar. So right now it's just going to be over black. If I want to add a different layer, I could just take a video file, drop it beneath it, and it would do that. Okay. Next one, let's just delete that since I don't really care about that right now. Next one we have here, something I don't suspect a lot of you are going to use, but these are what are referred to as generators, okay? I never really use them. You can use like a countdown. That might be, a helpful one. Some of them here are just a little bit weird, blobs, I tend to think that when you use these effects, it tends to make it pretty obvious, at least to people who do video editing, how you made your video, so I try to stay away from it. We have a curtain here. It's basically the same curtain effect that you see in iMovie, glimmer, all sorts of different. It's trying to load it in the background right now. Okay, but if you just kind of need a simple background, I think that looks more like Finding Nemo or something. But if you need like a basic background, some of these are animated, some of them are not. You can find those all right there. Okay. Next one we have here, another one that admittedly I don't use a lot, are themes. And themes are different effects that are meant to go together. So for example, if you're making the next Spider-Man, okay, if you're trying to make a homemade version of Spider-Man, you might want the comic book theme. And these are just different types of video transitions. All of those images of trees, by the way, those are placeholders. You'd replace that with video shots, okay, from your video. So this is just from going from one shot to another. Okay, I tend to think that this a lot of times makes the video look a little bit amateurish, but you know what? Sometimes you want your video to have that cute effect, if you will. So you can go through all of these here. There's quite a few of them that come with Final Cut. Some they're, parents, if you're doing maybe a sports video for your kids, from their soccer practice, it can be kind of cute. You can put, the score at the top of the screen, like you see right there. It works just like titles. You can just type right in and put in whatever text you want. Okay. Next thing I want to do, I'm going to jump around and show you a few different cool effects that I think you might want to be aware of. First one I want to show you here, let's do slow motion and fast motion as well. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Before I show you that, there's one other thing I want to show you, which is color correction. Now, if you're going to do any kind of, and the reason why I'm going to show you this first, I'm going to use this shot right here. Okay, so this shot, we start relatively close, and we back up to kind of a full frame view of Provincetown. One of the cool effects when you're doing different shots, if you want to kind of give it a little variety, is to either start slow and then go fast, or reverse it. Or maybe start slow and then go into normal speed. Okay, you can mix it up however you want. The important reason why I'm showing you color correction first is you have to do color correction first. Because as soon as you split this shot into two shots, it's very hard to apply color correction equally to both shots. It tends to look weird. So if you want to color correct, there's a few different ways you can do this. Click on your shot so that it's highlighted here in yellow, and you're going to go to this little magic wand icon right here, and we have a little arrow right next to it. And we're going to talk about these three right here: balance color, match color, and show color board. Balance color is a little bit like auto enhance in iMovie. You're just telling the computer, just do whatever you think makes it look good. And admittedly, when I'm doing my videos, sometimes I'll just do this and just see what happens. Usually when I'm shooting a sunset here, I typically don't even need color correction, but I don't even know if it's going to work that well for this one. But click on this. In my case, I actually think it made it look a little not quite as good. So you can keep that, or just keep in mind you always have Command-Z to undo. Okay? Option 2 is match color. Match color is very good when you're doing a two-camera shoot. You're going back and forth between actors, and you want the lighting to match. So what you're going to do with this is you're going to go to match color, and what you're going to do is you're going to basically click on the shot that you want it to match again. So if you look at these two shots here, the color, the lighting is very, very different. So if I click on this shot here, okay, it's going to attempt to make the color match between the two shots. This is not the greatest example because these are shot at two different times, so just please take my word for it. If you had two actors, same location, two different shots, with this you can click on the other shot and it'll just try to make the lighting match both shots. I'm going to hit cancel for now. The other option here is show color board, and this is where you can get into the nitty-gritty. So we have three different options here: color, saturation, and exposure. I think you can probably guess what they are. With color, like if your greens are a little bit off, you can literally grab the greens and you can kind of adjust them and bring them back to the way you want it. It's also a way to kind of add a little bit of warmth to your shot. Like right now, if you notice here, I'm adding a little bit more, I'm giving a little bit more attention to the reds in this case right here. Okay, I'm letting the other colors more shine than anything. I can also, let's undo that for now. Let's go to saturation. Saturation, we have your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. So you can either grab each of these dots and up them or lower them as necessary. Usually, if you add just a hair to each of these, it tends to just make it give it that extra little pop. Okay. The other option, instead, let me undo those three. So we're back to our original here, is this little slide bar here. This is the master. So if you slide this up, it's going to basically move all of them at the same time up. Just be very, very careful with this about adding too much. Subtle is better. And if you, of course, desaturate it, you are left with a black and white image. Okay. So I'm going to just keep it right there for now. Exposure, same exact deal. You can either manipulate them individually or you can use your master controls. Okay? Undo. Now let's talk about that slow motion, fast motion thing, right? So let's say I want part of the shot to be fast, and then I want the user to be able to just kind of take it in for a little bit. So then I'm going to maybe keep it at either normal speed or slow it down. Here's how I like to do it, okay? I'm going to pull out the blade tool, just a reminder, B on your keyboard for blade. I'm going to splice this shot into two separate shots. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate this first shot right here, and it's going to just seamlessly transition into the second shot. So what I'm going to do is to manipulate speed, you're going to go up here, if my memory serves me correct, yes it does, thank God, modify, retime, and here are the two options, slow or fast. Now, I wouldn't get too caught up over the percentages, or in the case of fast, how many times faster, because you can individually manipulate it afterwards. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do fast. I'm going to say, for now, make it 2 times faster. Okay? So it's going to automatically speed that shot up. Notice the orange bar. That means it does need to be rendered. I can still play it. It's just not going to play as smoothly as if it had been rendered. And as soon as I stop moving my cursor, it actually starts to go through and render it. So right now, let me just kind of play for you. You can see how it looks. That actually I thought looked pretty good, but I'm going to still show you how to change it up. See this blue, light blue bar that is now above my shot? I can grab the side of it, and if I want to make it even faster, I can click and drag it in. So see, now it's not just 200%. I can make it exactly this length. And if you watch right here, see how now I can make it match up with my key points so that it kind of matches the beat of the music. So now when I do that, just check out the look that we've got here. Let's give it 2 seconds to render and play. Kind of cool, right? So same thing applies, by the way, if you wanted to do slower. So let's say I wanted to slow down this shot here. I could go up to Modify. I can go to Retime, make it slow, 50%. I can make it either more than 50% slow or less, until eventually we get to normal speed. See, it actually goes green when you hit 100%. Okay, so we'll just do that. So there we get to 67%. So now we go fast and slow. Kind of a cool effect. If you're doing sports, that's a very, very cool effect, to go kind of fast and then really slow it down. Let's see here. Next thing I want to go over, freeze frame, for those of you who want to do that. If you want to do a freeze frame, let's find a better shot than that. Let's say I want to do that right there. Okay. What you have to do is just click on the shot, click and put your playhead wherever you want the shot to be. Go back up here, and if I remember correctly, I believe it's actually under Edit. So for Edit, is it Edit? Here, yes, I am correct. Add freeze frame. So with this, what it's going to do is if you do like I've done here, where it's in the middle of the shot, it's going to play the video, freeze frame it, and then at the end it's going to pick up where it left off. And just like with a normal photo, if this is a little bit too long, I think this is about 5 seconds, you can taper it back, so that it's now only that long. Cool. Next one we're going to do, which I've actually, let me just fix this shot because I did this. Now when I shoot with my drone does not record audio, so I have to kind of show you this one special. So this shot right here has audio. We're going to talk a little bit about audio here and a few different tricks with it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this. So you'll see we can see the actual sound waves here, okay? And I want to show you first how to change the overall levels. Now right now they're all, what normally would refer to this as being in the green, even though it's blue. If I raise this, you'll see how there's points here that are now like yellow, and even there's a little bit of red in there. Might be a little bit tough for you to see there. Okay, but see how there's yellow? You want to try to stay away from that because it's going to get blown out. It's just going to distort. It's just not going to sound that great. So if you need to tweak the overall levels for an individual shot, what you can do is there's this very hard to see, there's a thin black bar that goes through the shot, okay? If you put your cursor on it, it goes to that icon right there where you have an arrow pointed up and arrow pointed down. You can click and it's showing you how many decibels you're either lowering it or raising it by, okay? The other thing you may or may not be able to see, for those of you who are live, this is going to be very difficult to see. I'll try to punch it up in editing later on. There's a little dot at the very beginning of the shot when you roll your cursor over it. That is your fade ability. When I put my cursor over it, see how the arrows now go to the left and right? So if I want to fade in the audio, I can drag that dot to the right. It's causing a little curve right here. So as of right now, it's showing exactly how long it's going to take to go from no volume to full volume. Okay, so in that case, it's very quick. Okay? You can do that at the end of the shot as well. Sometimes another thing you might want to do is you might want to detach the audio. That is to actually extract it from the clip so that you can, for example, if you have multiple tracks going on here, you might need to extract the audio so that it's kind of its own little file. The easiest way to do this is secondary click on your clip, okay? And you see we have right here, detach audio. Another trick I want to show you here, there's a shortcut key, disable. So if you're going through your footage and you want to, like, let me give you an example. Sometimes when I'm playing with music, okay, I might have a few different songs, and I'm just kind of trying to, go away spinning pinwheel. I'm just trying to figure out like what song really sounds best with this. Well, if you were to play this right now, it would sound absolutely awful because right now we've got, we're about to have one track after the other. Oops, sorry about that. My cursor, I keep my cursor a little bit larger than normal so that it's easier for the folks who are here. Oops, let's go to, I'm not going to actually play this. So now we have multiple audio files on top of each other. It's going to sound horrible, right? If you need to do this kind of a test, what you can do is hit the V key. V disables. Okay, so now, for example, it's going to play this song, but not that song. Hit V again, and it re-enables it. Good little shortcut to be aware of. Next trick I want to show you is what to do when you're done with your video, about export options. There's two different tricks to do here. You can either use the little share button at the right-hand side of the screen, or you can go traditional and go File, Share. Okay? I always recommend do a master file export. Okay? And what I would do is, first of all, I'd save this to an external drive, maybe also something like Dropbox. Okay? Just so you have that copy. Make sure you go here under Settings. Okay? And where it has all these different things like video codec, format, I like to do at least one as the source. Now, notice the file size here just went from, I think it was, what was it originally? It was H.264. It went from 169 megabytes to, about 10 times that. In source resolution, 1.2 gigabytes, okay? Depending on how much space you have, you may or may not want to do this, but just keep in mind, it's always good to have a absolutely highest resolution copy of your video because, back 5 years ago, 1080p was like, well, no one has devices that can play 1080p. And nowadays, it's like all about 4K, and now they're coming out with higher resolutions than 4K. So you want to make sure you always have the absolute maximum resolution that you can get somewhere. Okay? You can include chapter markers if you use them. Personally, I don't. And then info is just, simply your text, and it's going to ask you on the next screen, where do you want to save this? And I believe, if I remember correctly, the default file format is a MP4 format. It's a very versatile format. So that about does it for our Final Cut Pro class today. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to the live audience and take their questions. For those of you who have been watching us on either our YouTube channel or our website, I want to first give you a really strong recommendation. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is absolutely free. It is the easiest way to be notified whenever we come out with new content. You are about to see a graphic appear on your screen, for those of you who are watching after the fact. Click on that. With one click, you can subscribe to our all of our classes. It's free. It's easy. We appreciate it. Also, check out our page on Facebook. It's facebook.com/TechTalkAmerica2. Don't ask. Long story. You'll find a link to that, of course, in the description as well. Thank you all for taking your time coming out here. If you haven't downloaded that PDF, look for that in the description of the video, and we hope to see you soon. And also, click that little like button and leave us a comment, too. This is David A. Cox with Tech Talk America. This is our class all about Final Cut Pro. Class dismissed.